Hi guys, glad you could make it. Brent, Beshara here. It's a beautiful Saturday day. I think it's the 19th of January. I'm not quite sure, something like that. We're living in amazing times, but we're also living in real trying times right now. And like my chief says, my Navy diver chief, he always said, Besh, bring to me a solution, don't bring to me a problem. And that's what I want to do today, is just share stuff that I've learned along my own journey, my own path, to allow me to live as well as I can. And it's a method of understanding and application that I've figured out for myself, to figure out how to diagnose my thoughts, my feelings, and which create my actions and determines my results in life. And so through just a vigilant practice since my retirement from the military of yoga, meditation, and reading, I've figured out and just found some breadcrumbs, some cosmic nuggets along the way that has helped me figure out how to get at it, how to live well, how to live a life of full self-expression, and a life of a life well lived. So that's my intention today, is just share this method of understanding and application. A little bit about my background. I served in the Canadian military for 24 years. And one of the motivating reasons why I joined the military was because the judge said to me, he says, he's looking at his paper and he says, I've seen you in my court here before. This is your second time before me. He says, if I see you in my court again, I'm going to send you to jail. So I suggest you join an institution like the military. And so after my probation, that's what I did. My bride, Kellyanne, says my talents would have been served best elsewhere, designing 3-day music festivals, but I joined the military, and so for 24 years I served. And I served first in the Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry. I served there for 6 years, did a peacekeeping tour in Cyprus, and then for the next 18 years I served as a clearance diver, a Navy bomb disposal diver, bomb disposal operator, and I served that for 18, and 5 years of which I served at our hostage rescue counter-terrorist in a special forces unit, and then I did 5 years also at our national EOD school, finishing out as one of the senior instructors at that school. I had an amazing career. I served with the most amazing men and women from around the world, truly clutched on, tuned in human beings that really get the big picture, and a real honor to serve with these men and women. For myself, though, that service came at a cost. It cost me mentally, it cost me physically, and it cost me, my family. I chose my career over my family, and so, I lived away for 9 years. So I had to deal with a lot of those, the stresses of choices, the choices that I made, and then having to live with those choices, and also the experiences of the military itself. So to help deal with that, I was on medications for 7 years, antidepressants, anti-anxiety, high blood pressure pills. And so in my transition from the military, I wanted to get off those medications. So I went and talked to my civilian doctor, and she says, Brent, people try to get off those meds, but mostly they just fall back onto them. So you just might as well just stay on them. And so I said, okay, because after 24 years, you just follow what the order of the day. And so when I went home and told my bride Kellyanne that, she snapped and she lost, and she said, well, that's no normal way to live. What's the egress program to get off those medications? And so I thought about it, and again, I don't advise this, but I got off the medications cold turkey. I just left them, and then so for 21 days I felt like I was a total biatch. Kellyanne says she didn't really notice anything, but after 21 days I had my first normal thought, and then my first normal feelings, my real thoughts, real feelings, and I haven't been on them since. And I was thankful for that transition, but now I'm off, and I'm thankful to be off those medications and live as clean a life as possible with yoga, meditation, and quinoa and kale and things like that. So, you know, in my retirement from the military, the one thing on the Friday when you're at your retirement party, there's lots of pats on the backs, and it's a lot of accolades and a lot of excitement and enthusiasm. But then on the Monday, you know, there's this vacuum of activity. There's this immense emptiness, right? And so what was missing for me was the application. In the military for 24 years, there was a daily application. When to get there, what you're going to do, how long you're going to stay there, where you're going to go, what you're going to do, and then when you're going to come home. There was this daily application, and that's what was missing from my life, was this application. So in leaving the military, I took 3 months off and just sat with it, just sat with the learning how to decompress from this institution. So one of the things I did was I went online and I started to study. I started to read. I started to read everything, and then YouTube, and then I started to see all these amazing people online, these poets, prophets, professors, painters, physicists, politicians, padres, priests, parsons, preachers, performers, playwrights, philanthropists, podiatrists, and philosophers. And I figured out that that's what I am. I am a philosopher. I love knowledge. I love gathering knowledge, but also I love to share knowledge. And I share knowledge mostly with my family and friends and those that'll listen. And I love sharing this knowledge. And in doing so, I also learn along the way, because we're all amazing people, right? And for me, I've had a luxury in the essence that I learned at a retreat to learn to have the courage to stand for your view of the world. And when I heard those words, I wept, because that's, when you're in something like an institution, it's tough to, break out of the mold, right? To find yourself, to be that little chicken, that egg, and break out of that, the mold that you've conformed to for 24 years. And so, it's taken me 10 years now to just, sort of figure it out and decompress from that framework. And that's what I've done. And so now, I'm living as well as I can in the relationship of my mind, body, and spirit. And so the luxury that I've created is to be able to have a lifestyle that allows me to do my dedicated yoga, to do my Wim Hof pond dips in my frozen pond for 5 minutes a day. It allows me to do the reading I need to do and the studying I need to do. But this is a life that Kellyanne and I have created. And so I'm very, very thankful for this. I call it a sincere luxury. And I feel we're living in amazing times, but trying times. And I want to help bring an understanding to how to let go of pictures of the past. Excuse me, I want to stay on track here. Okay, so again, I studied everybody. I found great knowledge in all the passages, scriptures, books, YouTube videos, and what I kept looking for were the nuggets, were the breadcrumbs of knowledge and understanding. And the key word for me was application. How do you apply this concept? How do you apply it to yourself and get at it? And so we've had, or I've studied people throughout history, from everybody from Plato, Hermes, Aristotle, Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, Ronald McDonald, Deepak Chopra, Einstein, Confucius, Emerson, Thoreau, Dean Radin, Marty Rosenblatt, Tom Campbell, Bruce Lipton, Mario Martinez, Rupert Sheldrake, Graham Hancock, Joe Rogan, and Wim Hof, right? Represent. And so with following these people, standing on these shoulders of giants and reading their books and their passages, you can see their key application of how they apply themselves, how they make their life amazing. And there's so many men and women now that are sharing their knowledge of how to live well, how to get at it. And you just have to type that in, TED Talks and all that stuff. We're living in amazing times, but it does take sincere commitment. The accomplishment of our goals is assured the moment we commit ourselves. And that's the toughest part, is this commitment to getting at it. Again, I do feel life is like an amusement park, and these are really crazy times right now. And so I feel that, like Socrates or Plato says, the best possible service we can be to our country or the world is to be the best version of ourselves. And that's what I emulate and try, to do on a daily basis, in my own ability as a human, in my own monkey brain, to get at living well. And for me, it's in the little moments. It's in the moments of meeting each individual I meet on the street, even the person that cuts me off in traffic, the person in front of me is paying for the groceries in pennies. It's those micro moments that determine, our reality, as Dr. Joe Dispenza says, our what does he say? Our personality, or I apologize for that. That's it. Our personality determines our personal reality. Our personality determines our personal reality, because if we are who we are, we're in a mood, and if our mood's aberrant or disparaging or whatever it is, then that mood lasts for days and weeks, and that becomes a temperament. And if that weeks turns into months and years, then that becomes our personality, right? And if we go downtown with a chip on our shoulder, for me, I've always found someone else out there with an equal and opposite chip on their shoulder. But conversely, when I've gone downtown with a glint in my eye and a spring in my step, I found other people also with the same glint and the same spring in their steps. So let's just have a look here. Right. So we're going to move on now to next is how I've learned and how I figured out in the most simplest way. What your tax dollars paid for me to do in the military, for the most part, was to figure out complex situations real time, and do the job as safe as possible. And then for me, it's recognizing patterns and systems. So I retired on the Friday, but all that military training didn't stop. I just applied it to knowledge and philosophy and reading and such. What I found is those people that I've studied is that these leading edge people are the Galileos of our time, like Graham Hancock, Rupert Sheldrake, Russell Targ. Their TED Talks were banned. That I find that very neat, that the leading edge of our species is still being bridled and limited. But when we look at podcasts like Joe Rogan and Tim Ferriss, we're listening to great people that are sharing the leading edge of our understanding, and that we are, I feel, we're okay. It's like this. Here's a quick concept. Regardless of your what your background is, your faith, your religion, your modality, your credo, your ethos, regardless of what it is, check this out. You're either a fundamentalist and you believe we're one-time consciousness, right? Or we're infinite energy beings having a mortal experience, temporarily experiencing infinity, okay? One-time goo, one-time consciousness, or an infinite energy being. The really neat part is, because you can't have 2 or 3 lives, we either get one life one time, or we get an infinite amount of lives. Me, I'm kind of hedging towards this, because for me it's all about the math. The math seems to indicate that we're with cycles within cycles, loops within loops. Okay, so regardless though of if we're a one-time goo or an infinite energy being temporarily experiencing infinity, this moment of nowness is the only moment we have, and that's what for me is sharing the concept of living in as present as possible. Okay, using the words that I'm going to use just to point us in the direction of how to analyze and diagnose what's going on. Okay, so so one-time goo, infinite energy being, the moment that we are experiencing is then completely unique. It's completely unique to this. So if we're only going to live life once, this moment that we're experiencing is only going to happen once. So it's very, creation is still happening. So this moment is divine. And But whereas if we're infinite, that still makes this moment that much special, because it's only going to happen once in a sea of infinity. Okay, so for me, the moment, and what I'm learning is the moment, like Eckhart Tolle talks about, the power of now, is that we command our future from the present moment. That the best way to predict the future is create it. And if we're focusing on what's wrong and what's missing, then that's what our energy is focusing on, because where our mind goes, energy flows. If we focus on what's right and what's here, and then that seems to be the math that we find, right? I've done hundreds and hundreds of tasks within the military and worked with, again, people of all sorts, because the military is just a cross section of society. So you would see people's attitudes towards the mission, right? And there's the people that got along, and those the people that didn't, and there's people that brought solutions and contributed, and those that didn't, right? Where was I going with that? Okay, one time goo. My apologies. 1 sec here. So yeah, so we command our future from the present moment, and so how do we diagnose this situation? Well, I've got some friends here that are going to help me out. I've got my friend here, Baby Buddha, represents our past, the previous versions of ourself, okay? The younger version, the previous version, okay? And that's all this represents, that, the past. And I've got buddy over here, Master JC, and what he's representing is the future. Our higher self, our more enlightened state. Like, I feel as a species, it's our desire to grow and expand, to become better, to be better people, a better group, tribe, culture, heritage, village. Remember, it takes a village to raise a village, or an idiot, right? So, right, so the future, right, can only, okay, the past is the past, the future is the future, and we're going to break it down, okay? And what I'm representing here is the now. There we go. I'm representing the now. Excuse me. We're in the now, okay? So what I've learned, one of the first books I got was Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. And for me, a lot of these cats that are writing these books, like Wallace Wattles was, what was his book? I can't remember right now. Wallace Wattles has a book out, and it's also about, the power of wealth and such. And they use money a lot, but I feel that that's the draw to get people, because people want more money. But for me, the wealth wasn't so much the money. The application that I took out of these books was the wealth was peace of mind. The wealth is the understanding of how life works. Because when we know the truth, then the truth sets us free, okay? And again, I'm not here to tell anybody anything. This is just what I've learned for myself and want to share. So the past is the past, the future is the future, and we're living here in the now of the bubble, the happy bubble, or maybe the not so happy bubble. And so what I learned from T. Harv Eker in his book, Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, is that our thoughts lead to our feelings lead to our actions, and our actions lead to our results. Our thoughts to our feelings to our actions, and our actions to our results. Thoughts and feelings happen on the inside of the body, and results happen on the outside of the body, and the bridge between the inside world and the outside world is action. So it takes intention and action. It's understanding and application, okay? Because if we do nothing, nothing happens. The bag of money doesn't come rocketing through the ceiling, okay? It takes us to use the natural laws of trade and commerce to get out in the world and make it happen. Because if we do nothing, nothing happens. Because if we do what we've always done, we're going to get what we've always gotten. And which way does a tree fall is the way it leans. So if we're always leaning into what's wrong and what's missing, then that's what we're going to collect. If we lean into what's right and what's here, that's what we find, okay? And that's been back to my missions that I worked on, and that's the point that I wanted to make, was that if we focus on what's right and what's here, then this is what we've got. This is what we've got to work with, because we work with what we've got to work towards what we want, okay? And so rather than pine and moan and drip about what's missing, Let's focus on what we do have, and let's work with what we have towards what we want. Okay, like the Sarge said to me in basic, he says, BESH, that any man and or woman can be cold, wet, or hungry, but through a little imagination, innovativeness, and ingenuity, you can live quite comfortably. But warning, there's going to be a little bit of work involved, and that's what I say is with this, that don't take my word for it. Warning, there's going to be a little bit of work involved. But once we truly commit to that goal, the accomplishment of that goal is assured the moment we commit ourselves. But it's going to take a little bit of work. All right. Okay. So let's go through it. So what are our thoughts? Okay. So we've got thoughts, feelings, actions, and results. So let's start with our thoughts. What are our thoughts? Where do they come from? Well, we have great scientists working that out, but for the most part, we don't know where they come from, but we understand that our brain is a processor. We know that it is a processor, and that we know that as it's processing, we process thoughts at 60,000 thoughts a day. I'm sure women have twice as many thoughts, and so they're operating at light speed. And now they've got a microscope so powerful that they can see inside the brain and seeing neurons. And neurons are brain cells, and they make our connections to form thought loops. And so we've got like 100 billion brain cells in our brain, and we also have correspondingly 100 billion stars in our galaxy. I wonder if there's a correlation there. Just thinking. Anyways, thoughts operate at basically light speed, and they've got a microscope so small now that they can see two neurons, brain cells forming a thought. And you can go online and see this, and it's these two nodes, and they've got little arms sticking off of them, and then these two are attracted to each other, and these tendrils form across, and that's making a thought. It's making a thought loop. And in basic, Sarge was always saying, Beshara, give your head a shake, right? And if you look at the Caesar Milan method, what's he doing? When he pokes the dog in the neck, or he gives the chain a pull, what's the Sarge and Caesar are talking about is breaking that thought loop, right? When we've seen the hero on in a movie or heroine, and they're freaking out, going, "We're gonna die! We're gonna die! We're gonna die!" And some cat gives them a slap. Well, what they're doing is they're breaking that thought loop. The little dog that's pining and yapping, going, "Meow, meow, 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 meow," and the owner's going, "Misty, Misty, quiet, be quiet." Well, that dog that's barking is got a thought, a little reality. When Caesar gives them that tug on the chain or the poke in the neck, it breaks that node, breaks that thought that's forming in their brain, okay? And then it pops them back to the now, when they're stuck in their head, right? They're looking at a picture, and that's essentially what a thought is. And you can do this for yourself. Just have a look. What is a thought? The thought is simply a picture in your mind. Any thought, any thought. For example, what did you have for breakfast? Well, I had for breakfast a smoothie. I had a smoothie. So in that smoothie shake, I had to form a picture of seeing it, right? What did you have for breakfast? Eggs, bacon, granola, ham hearts, something, or cereal, whatever. But you had to form a picture in your mind, right? You had to look. So that was a picture in the past. Now, if we look to the future, what are we going to have for supper? Well, I'm not sure, probably a salad and something. But I have to form a picture in my mind to think, again, go up into the belfry of my mind and see the picture of what I'm going to have in the future, which is, again, just a picture. But we can only access this from the present moment. So we see that thoughts are pictures, okay? The pictures that we create. And so, like Marissa Peer talks about, we are the pictures that we create and the words we say. The pictures we create and the words we say. So we see these pictures, and the pictures are essentially, or thoughts, are essentially cold, empty, and meaningless. And they only have the meaning in the meaning that we give it. Thoughts only have the meaning in the meaning that we give it. So if we have thoughts of the past, right, that are bad or negative of a nature, then they create a feeling in our body. right? And so that's what happens is our thoughts, these pictures, generate an electrical signal in our body that generates chemicals and releases that feeling. Right, so that's the thought creates the feeling in our body. And that's all we really need to know at this point. And you can do this for yourself. Marissa Peer does this talk on YouTube where she gets an audience to imagine holding a lemon in their hand and with great detail and then taking a bite, and you salivate in the present moment. Well, that's only because of the thought that you had. You know, when I was a kid, I got bit by a dog, the farm dog, and every time we would go to the farm, I would get freaked out because that dog was there, and I didn't like the dog and he didn't like me. But just in thinking of that dog, because he bit me once, I would freak out. I'd even feel the pain in my leg. But that dog was a day away. We had to drive to the farm. That dog was a day away. But I was experiencing that moment because I simply put a picture in my mind, which activated chemicals, released chemicals in my body, and I experienced that fight or flight rush, right? And simply from the picture in my mind. So that's what's happening to us. And so for me, how I had to process my decompression, deinstitutionalization from the military was learn how to process the pictures in my mind, which created the feelings in my body. And I still work at this every day. You know, if I'm having a discussion with my bride and, you know, it's a heated discussion, I'll feel the feelings, or, you know, so I'm learning then to understand what's going on here, what's the mechanism of my feelings to my thoughts, the relationship, and learning how to not necessarily control them, learn how to process them, because feelings are processes of the body. Processes the body no different than circulation, digestion, and respiration. And it's a process of the body that's being processed. And so if we live in harmony and balance, then we have harmony and balance in our thoughts. We have harmony and balance in our body. Excuse me. Let's see here. Where was I? Process the body. Right. So our thoughts lead to our feelings lead to our actions. So we have the thoughts, and we now know that they're creating the feelings in our body. So by learning how to, that's right. So in the understanding that it's a process of the body, okay, that it's a process like circulation, digestion, and respiration, that because we can witness it, we can observe it, our thought processes, which are creating our feeling processes, we can modify them. If we're having poor experiences, we can modify our understanding of our thoughts to our feelings and learn to surf our situation better. And that's what the doctor said, was that learning how to deal with it. And that's, you know, I would have liked to have had an understanding of how to deal with it by understanding the mechanism of perception that I'm experiencing, that we're all experiencing, okay? So it's a process of the body. So check this out. When you hear a great joke that's so funny, you hear Tom Segura drop one of his fantastic jokes, you just start laughing because he's put a picture in your mind of something completely hilarious. And so you laugh, you go, that was funny, that made me laugh. You go, ah ha ha, knee slap, and you're experiencing laughter, and you ride that feeling out until the very end. Remember, it's a process of the body, and when we process these feelings in the present moment, in the now, that's a healthy processing of that feeling. Poor processing of the feeling would be where if we hear something of a bad, negative, or sad nature, here in the West, we've learned to hold and not feel those feelings and not directly experience those feelings. And so these feelings get stored in our tissues, okay? These bad, negative feelings get stored in our tissues. And one concept here I want to share is that the past is also, I guess I could have put that up earlier. The past is what? Our stories, our history, our injuries, our traumas, our experiences, our events, and emotions. And this is the energy of we get it. So if our life, if our past is full of this energy of stories, history, injury, trauma, experiences, events, and emotions, then this is what we're going to energize in our reality. All right? Because we're focusing on this, and where our mind goes, energy flows. And so if we're focusing our thoughts on the stories, the blames, the woulda, coulda, shouldas, there's something wrong, there's something missing, what are other people thinking of me, right? The right to be right, right? If we're energizing our world with those thoughts, then that's what's going to energize our cells. And this is the work of Dr. Bruce Lipton and Dr. Mario Martinez and Dr. Joe Dispenza, is that when we focus, because our perspective is our reality, our personality, or like Dr. Joe says, our personality creates our personal reality. When we're looking at this, at these images of our past, and we're energizing it, then our cells are responding to the images that we see and the words we say. So if we're saying that it was BS and poppycock, then that's what's going to, and this isn't looking at the world through rose-colored glasses. This is directly experiencing our present moment with all of our sensors, with all of our senses tuned into what's going on, perceiving the moment as much as possible by directly experiencing it. So if we're having, because in the present moment, what we experience is sensation, images, feelings, and thoughts. In the present moment, right? We feel what we feel, we see what we see, right? We have the feelings that we have, right? Our thoughts lead to our feelings lead to our actions, and our actions lead to our results. So in understanding how to process this, right, we create the best way to predict the future is create it, but we can only create it from the present moment. And if we're being hindered or limited or impeded in life, it's mostly because we're activating, our fear-based perspectives, our fear-based realities based on stories, history, our injuries, our traumas. And these are very real things, right? And I appreciate that they are, because I've lived through my decompression from the military. I've lived through sincere grief and loss. And these moments don't define who we are. They're not our reality, okay? But they have happened to us. And they're very sincerely, a lot of these situations suck out loud. And I've lost friends, dear friends, and I don't want to get into it, but it doesn't define who we are. We can still find joy in our life. We don't have to carry any of this guilt and shame or anything like that from the past. The woulda, coulda, shouldas. I should have done something, right? We don't have to carry that anymore. Okay, we can let that go. And initially, it's tough. It's super freaking tough to let go of these habits. And these are simply habits of poor processing, poor programming. Remember, success is but a habit, as Aristotle says. And it takes work, a little bit of work in the beginning till it becomes a habit. But we can do it. We're amazing creatures that have these plastic minds that can mold and morph and process at ballistic light speeds. But we got to be kind to ourselves and get at it. But if we do what we've always done, we're going to get what we've always got. And we need to nobody needs to do anything. I'm not saying that. But if you're not living well, if you're not enjoying the present moment experience, right, then I'm trying to share with you an understanding of helping you let these go. Let them go, because they no longer serve us. And that's what I learned, is to let go of the grudges, the blames, the resentments, those attachments to form, which are emotional forms, physical forms, emotional forms. And we hang on to these things, and we energize these pictures of the past, simply just pictures that are impeding our present moment experience, because we're like dwelling and pining about the past, or we're anticipating some future event. as we learn that our future events define who we're being in the present moment, right? So if we're, stress can work both ways. And so if we're looking at the future and like look at the difference between your feelings between, oh, I gotta go to work on Monday, right? Or I'm going on a vacation on Monday, right? There's no difference between those two, except it's just a picture of vacation or a picture of the job. There's no difference. It's releasing feelings in our body, right? So if we're focusing on the information, because it's all just information, it's all just data, it's all just electromagnetic information, right? How do we see? We see through thought waves of light bouncing off objects that then are hitting the back of our retina, sending electromagnetic information to our brains, which are putting pictures in our mind, and that's how we see. How do we hear? We hear sound waves traveling through the air, hits our tympanic membrane, sends electrical magnetic information to our brain, puts pictures, right? When you put your hand into a bag and you're feeling, right? You go, oh, I can feel that. You're putting imagery into your mind. And so, where do we go with that? Is the... it's all just information. So our senses, so it's just wiring. So all of our senses are wired: ears, nose, mouth, eyes, and taste. And if we were to rewire that, we know that people have synesthesia now. You would be able to taste blue, right? You'd be able to hear Wednesday and things like that. People hear colors and see sounds, right? And this is now quite common. So we see it's just information that's being processed through the hub of our brain, right? This information is being processed. So, and we know that through that processing creates the feelings in our body now. And I think we can see the mechanism of this, of our perception, is how we choose or have learned to perceive the world is how it is. And that's what the work of Bruce Lipton shows us, is through the stem cell research he did back in the 70s, that when he exposed his stem cells to different materials, that they started to turn into those materials and take on those qualities. And he figured out that it was only through their environment, through their perceptors, that they changed, right? So, like the monk, before enlightenment, he hauled water and chopped wood, and after enlightenment, we still haul water and chop wood. So it's how do we choose to perceive the world around us, and how have we learned, right? Initially, our thoughts, where does our thoughts come from? Initially, there's some genetics involved, but also it comes from our parents, right? The first sound that we hear is our mother's heartbeat, right? And the next sound we hear is the first sounds he hears, I believe, is his father's voice. No, it's the mother's heartbeat and then the father's voice. What's neat is that's where the initial programming of our thoughts come from. Then from our siblings and from our family and friends and society, and that's where our programming comes from. And that's why, if we were to clone 6 of you and put you on one on each continent and grow you up, you would all basically like the same things. You would all culturally, you'd have the same basic dispositions, but half of you, culturally speaking, would eat meat, half of you wouldn't, half of you would believe in reincarnation, and the other wouldn't believe in reincarnation. And that's just due to your cultural upbringing, the programming of your culture, right? I try to live as possible as a global citizen, to see us all, hurtling through infinity on this speck of dust, traveling, at high ballistic speeds around other ballistic objects traveling at ballistic speeds. And, for me, I want us to lean into us as a species, a global species. And, if we look at the world, the globe now, it's all, parcels of land. And I feel in my heart of hearts that the society of the future is going to look back at us and seeing us as, wow, what a fragmented society, right? There is no us or them. There's just us, right? It's just we, the people, us, living our life. Everyone's doing the best they can, and everyone's, right in their own mind. And when we can find the commonality versus focusing on the difference. And it's all what we focus on is what we attract in the world, and what we put out is what we get back, energetically speaking. And what we resist persists, right? So if we keep resisting change, right? And I love what Socrates says is, don't fight the old, focus instead on building the new. So we don't need to go to battle anymore. War is obsolete. We just need to focus on, being innovative and willing to change. And what I learned from the shaman, the Sha women, is that when we truly lean into this tipping point of attitude, this tipping point of understanding and application, it's only going to take 10 years for us to really change. And it does seem scary, but for us to be, do, and have different things in life and create a different reality, we have to be doing and become different people. And change our personality is so tough. But luckily I've been at least 51% happy in life. Whatever genetic programming that my beautiful parents gave me, gave me the fortitude to be at least 51% happy. And you talk to any of my friends, and they'll say I'm a pretty positive guy. Okay, and but I apply that happiness now, and what I've learned from the military, and what I learned from my family and friends. I learn it and I apply it, and now I just want to share it as much as possible. I believe in us. I believe in you, and because we've always existed on small groups of 50 people, small groups that have carried our culture and our species forward. So I do believe in the village. I do believe in tribe. I believe in us as a global village, and so this is what I am doing in my heart of hearts is to share this knowledge that I've gathered, because I've had a luxury to gather it, and now we have the luxury of this desktop publishing. And so I just want to share this firstly with my family and friends, my military brothers and sisters, the cops, the paramedics I've worked with, and teachers, and whoever just is bummed out and upset and it's not working out for them, that you can do it. You can do it. And if I could share one thing with anybody, is that just commit to sitting still, commit to pen and paper, writing things down, commit to listening to your thoughts, listening to the pictures that we create in our mind, right? And learn how to process in the moment, how my thought, that simple picture in my mind, is creating a feeling in my body. So for the trauma and the experiences I've seen that have been completely horrible, right? I just learned to be able to sit with them and see them for what they are. And now, because in the present moment those events have happened, days and days and weeks and months and years ago, that I can see it for what it is, because it's not happening now. The previous experience, the previous event isn't happening now, okay? But it has an effect on me right now, and that event is still activated per se, in the sense that if we had something that was so horrible of nature that I can't even think of it, the energy from witnessing that event is still stored in our body. It's energy, okay? And if we don't learn how to process that feeling by letting it go, by letting it come to the surface, then it gets stored in our tissues, okay? And this is where our cancers come from, our fibromyalgias and all of this other stuff. And the work of Dr. John Sarno talks about this stuff, of learning how to directly experience these unprocessed emotions, events, and experience and what I've learned to do is by sitting with these experiences and events, by witnessing them in my mind, by sitting still in a quiet place I learned when I initially started to learn how to meditate, 5 minutes was torturous. I'd hit the timer and I'd try to sit and I'd look at it, and it's only a minute and a half has gone by, right? Now I sit for 5 minutes in the cold icy pond and love it. In my meditation practice, sometimes 2 and 3 hours will go by. But that's just because I've learned to enjoy sitting with myself. And until we have the courage to sit with those previous pictures, those experiences and events, They're going to stay stored in our tissues, and they're going to affect us, and they're going to keep poking at us and poking at us and poking at us, because the body wants to process these experiences and events. It wants to naturally process it, just like the bad crab sandwich that we ate, or the one too many tequila, right? It's an energy that the body wants to get rid of. But if if the experience is small enough in nature, then we can just pass it and it'll just pass through our system. But if it's of large enough nature, like we had too much bad crab, too much tequila, then the body's going to want to get rid of it. And feelings are processes of the body, no different than a burp, shit, sneeze, fart, orgasm, vomit. It's a process of the body that has to be processed. And if we impede it through our thoughts, saying, I'm not going to throw this up, well, the body's going to say, I want to throw it up. And if we try to impede it with our mind, then what happens is the body's going to say, right, I'm either going to black you out or you're going to throw up anyways, right? And that's the same thing with these events and emotions and experiences, is the body's naturally trying to expunge it from the body. And it's through the direct experience that we get the opportunity to dissipate these old energies, these old bubbles of information that are stored in our body. And so what happens is we're energetically bothered, right? Our experiences is being impeded by these previous events. So through, the cosmic process, events line up in our life to allow us to directly experience these things. That's why we have these occurrences. Why does this always happen to me? Why is this always happening to me? It's because we either have some poor programming, right? Poor habits of thought and perception, or we have, traumas, experiences, events of the past that are impeding our experience of the present moment. And we might not even be conscious of what's going on. So what I've learned to do was, by sitting still and allowing and accepting, powerful words, the experience of what I'm having, right? When we have to upchuck, we have to throw up the experience of the past, which was that crab salad, but it was bad crab. We don't need to know that it's the crab salad. We could probably figure it out, but we just need to get rid of it from the body, and that's through, the direct experience. We by sitting still and accepting the situation for what it is, that it's not happening now, and viewing it without judgment, right? Viewing it without blame, we can allow those pictures to be present in our mind, and by sitting still with it, we let it bubble up, just like a burp, just like a fart, just like a sneeze. We let it bubble to the surface and we directly experience. But in the West, it's tough for us to sit with our feelings, right? But I've learned to be present to those feelings, and through those great waves of grief, great waves of emotions, events, and experiences that are bubbling up. A lot of times I don't have a picture to the experience that's coming up, but I just need to let it go. Do I need to know what's making me sick, or do I need to know what's causing me to sneeze, burp, poo-poo, or whatever? I don't need to know. I just need to know I need to process it and let it out. So by learning to allow the feeling to bubble up, just like the burp, sneeze, then we process it. And that's how I've learned for myself to process it. I'm not here to tell anybody to do anything or how to do anything. This is just how I've learned to do it for myself, based on the hundreds of books I've read, thousands and thousands of hours of YouTube that I've watched, and just seeing the really great people get at it. There is a simplicity to life, and there is a there is a simplicity to life. Warning, don't take my word for it. Warning, there might be a little bit of work involved, but again, once we truly learn to play a better game, a higher game, and by just being the best us in the moment, I'm not always great at it. Talk to my bride, right? But when I do step up to my own plate, like I've learned from Lau Russell, she says, God, nature, the divine will work with us but not for us. And that's what I've learned to do, is by learning to process these previous experiences and events recognizing them, that they're simply just pictures in my mind that are not happening now, right? It's not happening now, nor are the pictures of the future happening now. But there are pictures that are impeding my experience of the present moment because I woulda, coulda, shoulda, there was something wrong, there's something missing. What are people thinking of me? Oh, I've got the right to be right, right? And these are those pictures of the past that we're energizing, we're pressing play on. You know, like my son says when the girl's freaking about, oh, I was gonna wash my hands, oh, there's germs everywhere. He'd just say to her, just stop thinking about it. Stop thinking about it, right? Stop thinking about it. Stop giving it that picture, stop giving it energy, stop giving it a power, right? Because what happens is when we're present in the body, and this is what I've really learned with the Wim Hof method by sitting in my cold pond for 5 minutes at a time, I can only be present to the body. As soon as I pop up into the belfry of my mind with the bats and the squirrels, right, the cold rushes in immediately. When I first started this, the water was so cold. The winter water is the same temperature. But when I first started, the water felt like it was burning my skin, right? But now through the Wim Hof method and through a dedicated practice for 2 years now, I can sit in that pond for 5 minutes easily now. And it's very refreshing. And again, that's through mindset and application. Just to know it, doesn't do it. I got to do it. So to do is to know. And so what I immediately feel, and you can get the same thing with a cold shower, is the feeling of being present to the body. And when we're present and we're breathing properly, we're fine because there's nothing impeding our experience of the present moment. But when we when we go up into the belfry where our mind is, I think nature's biggest joke is putting our eyes up here. So we feel we're up here in the periscope of our sensors, right? And that's all this is a glorified sensor, no different than a robot, right? It's sensing the environment. And that's what these are, sensors. I feel we live here in our heart space, because when you come up to someone, a stranger, you say, hi, I'm Brent, or hi, nice to meet you, or nice, I love you too. But you don't go, hi, I'm Brent. Right? Hi, you don't say that because then, we don't exist here. This is a sensor and a processor that's processing our experience of reality right now. But I'll have more talks on that later. Right now, I just want to share with you the simplicity of the present moment, that regardless of the experiences, the events, the stored emotions that we have in our body, we can learn to process them and live a life well lived, right? But it takes some dedicated practice, just a little bit, 5 minutes a day. And what I learned to do was just Monday to Friday, sit for 5 minutes. I would sit with my book and my paper and learn to recognize thoughts as just basically leaves on a river, clouds passing. That's the imagery that they give us in the beginning, and just learn to sit and not be swayed by it. That when I recognize that, oh my gosh, I've been lost in thought in the belfry for the last 5-10 minutes, not to berate myself, but to say, wow, thank you for the awareness. Thank you for my awareness of the present moment. Going back to the breath, going back to simply just breathing and watching the breath, feeling the sensations of the breath on my nose or my mouth and in my body. And then allowing these energies of the past, regardless of what they were. It could just be accumulated stress of society, regardless. You don't have to be a flight controller, paramedic, cop to experience stress, right? Stress can just come from poor processing of the present moment, feeling that there's something wrong, there's something missing. What are people thinking of me? The right to be right, right? So by learning to process, like learning how to eat, process our digestion, right? Learning how to breathe properly, and this is learning how to process our feelings, which are generated by the pictures in our mind. The pictures we create the feelings in our body. And if we're not feeling good, then what are the pictures that we're focusing on? Are we always focusing on television information, the news information, media information, right? That's information that our processor's processing. And if we're always giving it information, never giving it a time to chill out, then the processor for our mind is working, and that's why we're like, right? You know, for example, when you turn on your computer and you open Photoshop and Excel and Outlook and all those programs at once, there's a that happens. It slows down. Same thing if you're in a stressful environment, a stressful relationship, right? That's a lot of information that the mind has to process. Okay, there's basically 2 million bits of information around us at any one point in time, and we can process 6 or something like that. It's a pathetic amount, right, that we can remain conscious to. But if we're always feeding our brain information, then it's working. Okay, you don't need to do anything. But what I've learned to do is by sitting still through meditation, by a dedicated practice, initially just for 5 minutes a day, Monday to Friday, learn to allow and learn to process the pictures of my mind, and seeing them for what they were just pictures, because all my vexations, disgruntlednesses weren't happening now. They're only happening in my mind, on the player in my mind, playing those pictures over and over of disgruntledness, resentment, anger. But once I saw what it was, I then learned through that process that I had to have accountability for the experiences of my past. I had to have authorship and ownership and authenticity from the present moment, looking backwards. Once I accepted and had that ownership of those pictures, saying, yeah, that did happen to me. Right, I did do that. But then I learned through the landmark process that what happened, happened, and what didn't happen, didn't happen. What was said, and what wasn't said, wasn't said. That's simply the experiences of the past now are pictures. Yes, there could be some pending issues, but for the most part, when you really sit down and look at it, the moment that we're fretted about, because they say we're not really upset for the reason we think, right? What it is an opportunity, that obstacle, that pain, that there are opportunities for us to access peace of mind, to directly experience those pictures of the past. And that's what those obstacles are. These impeding moments and thoughts, right, is the body's natural process for us to directly experience it. But we've learned this fearful method of not experiencing our feelings, right? We allow ourselves to feel really good feelings, right? Really happy feelings. Those are easy ones to process. But we haven't learned to process, heavier feelings, sad, mad, and bad feelings, right? But they're just processes. Like we talked about, a healthy process of a happy feeling would be, ha ha ha, that made me laugh. That was so funny, that made me laugh. But a bad, mad, or sad feeling would be, initially, we've learned to shut it off. But a healthy process would be, wow, that made me mad. Wow, I'm feeling anger. Wow, that made me mad. Oh, I'm feeling anger. Wow, that really made me mad. But it's not happening now per se. If it is, then you have to deal with the situation. You got to orient, you got to observe, you got to decide and act in the present moment. But once the moment's over, or you hear some information, to learn to process it, because there's no sense in moving forward with this energized anger or freaked out state. What I've learned to do is by processing the moment, by, whoa, that made me mad. Oh, I'm angry. That made me mad. I'm angry. And then I learned to decompress by keeping the picture in my mind, but seeing it for what it is, breathing into the feeling, and letting it dissipate naturally through the direct experience. And that's it, by staying present to the picture in my mind. And initially, certain events that I've experienced, I can only get glimpses of them in the beginning. I just like even thinking of opening that picture, and it'd be too much. But a lot of my processing, I just had the dumb luck courage to sit with it. But also in the beginning, I needed to find facilitators, other people that got it, and learn and asked to sit with them. I found coaches, other people living their life. How do they process it? And also through plant medicine, ayahuasca, psilocybin. These are medicines that the shaman and sha women have used for thousands and thousands of years. Plants that allow us access to learn to process the previous experiences in the past, so that we can see them for what they are and see the lessons. Because ultimately what I'm learning in life, that in every experience there is a gift. There's a gift, and it might not even seem like it, but in years to come, I found that all of my experiences have been a gift of at least understanding, at least a gift of knowing that, well, I'm not going to do that again, or I'm not going to make those choices. Because in the fall of '06, when I was looking at leaving the military, I realized that this was a case of, for me to really live well, it was a case of choices, my choices, and my accountability for myself. And that was it. It was a simple understanding of the choices I've made, and now the accountability, being able to sit with the choices I've made, right? And then seeing them for what they are, that they're just simply pictures of my past, my stories, my history, right? That they're just pictures that, and if they're of a bad, mad, or sad nature, I've learned to process the feelings from being able to look at those pictures. Now I can look at them, all of them now, for the most part that I can find, or the feelings I allow and accept to come up, that they're just pictures of the past, no different than a Sunday newspaper, okay? And that's how I've learned to process the decompression from the military. It's how I've learned to process the choices I've made in life, and now to process the experience I have in the present moment, be it whatever, because life is happening, life's occurring all around us. I find if I spend too much time in the media information stream, that my brain shuts down. I have to have technology timeouts. I can't, especially now that I've learned this method of connection by just sitting still. And one of the things I learned to do by writing things down was to make a list. In the beginning, I made a list on how to create my dream job. I saw all my buddies getting out of the military, but you know what? That's another lecture, not lecture, but a sharing. I'm not here to tell anybody to do anything. Everybody's all right. Everybody's okay. Everybody's doing the best they can with what they've got. And this story, my story, isn't for everybody. Okay, it isn't for everybody. But if it can help, I'm so thankful. I love to talk about this. This is my favorite subject in the world. Life is my favorite subject. We're living in amazing times. But right now we're also living in some trying times. And so I want to help out. I want to help people live as well as they can, live with full authenticity and full self-expression, with love, kindness. I feel we're going to have world peace in our lifetime. And it's going to happen through education, empowerment, enthusiasm, and empathy. And when we truly commit to living with these tenets, this ethos, this credo in our life, the world, the universe, the matrix responds to what we're putting out. And this is what we know in the math of the quantum world, that the observer effect, that what we focus on, we do attract. Okay, we know that through the physics, that Max Planck and Niels Bohr and Albert Einstein and the guys, that when they were working on their experiments, that they knew that they couldn't be in the room. We now know through people like Russell Targ and Hal Puthoff and Marty Rosenblatt, through remote viewing, that we can, and Rupert Sheldrake, that we can easily send our consciousness to any point in space or time and observe any person, place, or thing in the present moment or in the past. And we now know that we can observe into the future. And these are our natural human abilities. These are our abilities to send our consciousness beyond our physical body, okay, our perceived physical body. That there's more space in matter than there is actually matter itself. And these are topics, and these are the information of the day that thoroughly inspires me, right from ancient tribal knowledge to the most leading edge of our quantum understanding. And then the amalgamation of our spirituality and science. Because there is a simplicity to life, but we got to focus on it and live with wonder and live with excitement and clean up. And I find the best possible service that I can be to society is just being simply the best me that I can be. So I say this with absolute sincerity. I'm so thankful to have this opportunity to live in a life where I can just say the words that I've said, because there's people living in this world that aren't even able to say those words, out in public without, repercussions. So I'm so very thankful to live in a world that allows me to now sit and stand for my view of the world. I have family and friends that support that understanding, and I just want to share this because this isn't for everybody. Some people won't even get this, and that's okay, because everyone's okay. Everything's all right. And just the more of us that lean towards the positive side of getting at it and turning this world around with better technologies, better understanding, better medicines, better, pharmacies, better educations, better banking systems, when we learn to see the good in it, that we don't need to throw it all out. We just need to rejig it. We need to just modify what's going on. And how we do that is, rather than putting blame and accusation, is by doing what I can do within my own happy bubble, and it's by me being the best me that I can be. So if you have any questions, you can find me on the Facebook, and I wish you all very, very well. If you're hearing this, you've got your health, you've got an opportunity to make change in your life, and you can do it. I believe in you. I see it all the time. I sit with my friends and family, and we have discussions, and they tell me their story, their history, and they talk about their situation. And but ultimately, the ultimate thing is, all of our vexations and disgruntlednesses are just pictures of the past. Okay, it's not really happening in the present moment. Certain situations can be happening, but we can learn to let go of that vexation, that sincere energy that's causing us physical, debilitative actions, because we're focusing and we're stewing, and we haven't learned how to process. So I wish you guys well. I want you to live as well as you can. Life is amazing, and hope to see you. And that's it.
That was easy.
All right, guys. Live well. Talk soon.